Alright, what I'm doing for this video, number one, I've used two different color cordages so it'll make it easier for you to see the knots. Second of all, I'm shooting over my shoulder so you can see how these are tied. Now the first knot that we're going to do is what's generally called a square knot or a reef knot. And a square knot is a basic knot that's used in many applications to finish off a lashing or a tie or something. What you do with a square knot is basically go left over right and make a loop in your rope. Then you go right over left and make another loop. You can see that forms a knot that looks very symmetrical, and you'll notice that both of these pieces come up on the same side. That's going to be important in a few minutes when I show you the Thieves knot. The reason, again, this knot, when pulled, you can see I put pressure on that. That ties down on itself, so it keeps it in strongly. But it's also pretty easy to release just by pushing these two ends together. Let me do that again. Left over right. Now a lot of times when I'm getting this knot tied, I actually forget where I'm at. I forget if I want left over right or right over left. So one of the ways to remember it is to see where this back loop is coming off and go on the same side as that loop, because then I'm going to curl back around and be symmetrical. So it's left over right, right over left, and you've got the square knot. Right up here, one of my little friends has come up. That's Nutter, and she came up in the middle of our video, so I got a nut out and gave to her. We carry nuts around with us. Anyway, let's go back to our knots. Now, one of the problems a lot of people have when they tie the square knot is they accidentally tie it backwards. We're going to purposely tie it backwards, left over right. I'm going to go left over right again. And they come out with something that doesn't look symmetrical. You can see the ends come out the opposite way. They don't lay against the sides of the main rope. One of the problems with this is if you tie this as a tie-off, for example, say in a bowline, this knot will slip apart. Let me do that again and show you, because it's very dangerous if you're using this in any situation where you need the knot to stay tight. These knots just tend to pull right apart. And that's called the granny knot. So make sure when you're tying this, left over right, right over left, you get that symmetrical look. Both ends are coming up and laying alongside the other rope. Now, one more knot, and this is a sneaky little knot. There's another way that you can tie the reef knot. If I make a bite in the rope, that's just a loop. You notice this end is coming down, and I come up through and around the cordage. I just came up through the bite and around and back down through the bite. You'll look at our old familiar reef knot. What I did was I came up and I went away from this small tag end. But what happens if I come up and go toward that tag end and then go back through? It's not wanting to do it here for me. There you go. And go back through. You see our square knot again, except this is not a square knot. This is a great knot to tie when you are trying to keep a bag shut and it's kind of a primitive lock. If you'll notice, that tag end is on the top, but this tag end is on the bottom. Most people, when they tie this knot, they look at it, they say that's a square knot, they'll untie it, and they'll go back and they'll go like this. And they'll tie a square knot in there, because everybody knows this way to tie a square knot. But you see where your tag ends are? They're both on the same side. So if I see that I've tied a thief knot to start with, let's go through that again. I come up through the bite, around away from the tag end. I'm sorry. Up through the bite, around toward the tag end, and back through the bite. I have a thief's knot. Again, just a primitive little tool to use. It's kind of a lock. People don't look at the ends. People are generally unobservant. They'll look at this, they'll see a square knot, and because they don't know how to tie a thieves knot, what they'll do is they'll just tie a square knot back in there, and you can know that your gear has been compromised. The last knot that I want to show you on this video is what's called a figure 8 knot. Now if I just make a turn in my rope and come up through that turn, that's an overhand knot. However, if I make that turn in my rope, come around and back down through the rope, I make a figure 8. You can see that looks like an 8, thus it gets its name. Now, one of the useful applications of this figure 8, and it has a lot of applications, is to tie things off. For example, if you wanted to tie off the corner of your tarp and you wanted to leave this permanently in there, what the cowboys would do actually in the Old West would be to tie a figure 8. Let's do it again. We fold a loop, go around with the bite, and back down through the loop, making our figure 8, and they would leave a tag end. It would be a little longer than this, but this would sit on the end of their horse's lead, and that would just stay in there. When they went up to the bar to tie off their horse, they would simply put the cordage around the bar and follow the figure 8 back around. Watch as I follow it. Come around, follow the figure 8, and back down through. And what that does is make a nice tie-off knot. And that tie-off knot again looks just like a figure 8. You can see it in there. So that's a good way to tie something off. If you want something that's quick release, this also is easy because you just pull this loop out and you have it done. So that's the figure 8 knot. Again, another very useful knot. Simply put a loop in the rope, go around the loop, and back down. Now make sure when you go through there, you don't go back down and through your loop, because that will just come unraveled. Okay, so around and down. Not around and through both. Just around and then down through your bite. You have a figure 8.